So Mike, first podcast, so I think this is the kicking it off. So start off with the drinks, seeing as it's the middle of the day. We've gone for a Diet Coke and
Guinness Zero. So you do this, and then you do that. Interestingly, actually, I've only recently got into Guinness, really.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't know if it's an age thing.
I think it probably is. You go from lager to ale to Guinness, and it's becomes acceptable.
WKD first, into lager.
Blue?
Yes. Was partial to tropical reef.
That doesn't surprise me.
So, you know, cider, lager, whatever you tipple. That's good.
I'm quite impressed with it, to be fair.
Okay, good.
Yeah, nice. So, you know what's quite interesting, you think about it, we've both got non-alcoholic drinks, yet as an agency we've got a bar. Because it's trendy to have a bar, and I think like old school culture in agencies and stuff was to have a bar, go for a drink after work and stuff. But if you think of what, I don't know, 70% of our team now would probably prefer this to be a Starbucks.
Agreed. It is true. I think that's, I don't know what the rationale behind it is or the turning point, but I think it's that whole, I don't know, location as well, I think is a big driver to certain things. I don't want to say work-life balance, because what is that? That's really subjective. But I think that's a big factor as well.
Yeah.
You know, that coffee culture as well is a massive thing. I think it's more of an occasion now.
Yeah, but I don't quite get the concept of going out for a coffee, or even buying and paying for a coffee to come in when you've got like coffee machines and stuff. That's
I know what you mean. Yeah.
I think like the social side of a bar is more like this. And you have your beer, definitely. You sit down, you have a chat with your mates and stuff. I've never found myself going, oh, do you know what, lads? Let's go for some coffees and we'll sit and chat. It's just not my generational thing.
But I also think, is that a male perspective of things as well? As in, I would always go for a beer or try and get 9 holes of golf in if I can.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
So if you think of the younger generation that we probably have working for the agency now, you know, large majority of the agency is probably sub 30.
Yeah.
And as we were saying, that sort of coffee culture and stuff, I think it's probably because of the type of work that we now do and the skill sets that are now within the agency. So if you think of an agency from 20 years ago, you didn't have a social media team.
Yeah.
You didn't have a developer team. You know, a lot of actually what the agency was made up of was probably more senior people, which were the account directors, account managers, etc. So I think maybe that's a move when you've got a full service agency like ours and the younger generation starting. That's hence why more people go for coffee than having a beer.
Yeah. I think that's probably right as well. If you look at the sort of hierarchy of our agency, or more so organisational structure.
I was going to say, we don't do a hierarchy.
No, that's why I changed it to organisational structure. To your point, I think if you went back 20 or 30 years, it would be so top heavy, almost with that creative led idea. But now there's so much more emphasis put on that sort of middleweight position as well. And they're so important to the agency, especially given its full service.
Yeah.
So no, I definitely see that.
So I think it's an interesting thing when you mentioned full service agency. It reminded me of that convo we had the other day. You came up with that phrase that everyone gets wrong, but it's quite a good way of explaining full service agency.
Jack of all trades.
That one, but the full phrase is?
So people use jack of all trades, master of none, almost as a bit of a derogatory term to say, well, you're not a master of anything. However, the full phrase is actually jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one.
Which pretty much describes the discipline, right?
Exactly.
So in theory, if you were a PPC agency, you could be the world's best PPC agency. But any brief that you get is always going to have a PPC answer.
Correct.
Same if you're a creative agency, you're always going to come up with a creative campaign. If you're a print-based agency, the solution's always print. Yeah. So I think that it's an interesting thing when you're trying to explain full service agency to people, is that phrase, if anyone knew the full version of it, actually would be really, really useful for us.
Yeah, because I think that's when, from a briefing perspective, and I know we've worked on many campaigns previously where it is that holistic view. So we'd never sit down and go, right, how can PPC fix this brief? It's not that at all. It's what is it? And sometimes, you know, it's actually, it's not what we think could garner the most amount of revenue or anything like that. It's really not that. It's actually what is the right solution for that. And it could be that, no, you don't need digital actually.
Yeah, agreed. I think the in our team as well, having Vic, Noel, and Mike in the data team, you've got the evidence of the data side of stuff, and then you go, look, we haven't done a preference, we haven't picked a particular medium that makes us the most money. We've actually gone, the data's telling us one thing, and therefore these are the 2 or 3 solutions we think you might be able to go for. Because I always think as well, a client should have input.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't think we should all go, here's the one answer, do you want it or not? I think it's quite good to be able to go, so our data, our skill sets could offer you 3 different solutions to get to the end goal. What's your gut feel as well?
Yeah.
You know, you're the client, you know your business, you own your business, you sit there and talk to customers every day. We'll put that input as well, a bit more of a team effort.
It's interesting because I remember a few years ago when we started the data and insights team, I think we both had, it was actually quite a hard sell to clients to start with.
Because everyone was more emotive led, right?
Yeah, and it was almost like data's really objective, but we're still trying to sell in data and saying trust us with the data, as it were.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I find it a lot of an easier sell, as it were. Why do you think that? Do you see there's been a shift in sort of client mindset to go, okay, yeah, it's got to be data back.
I think it's always like big news always changes stuff. So in theory, big news changes big data. When Trump got into power the first time, and then Cambridge Analytica and Brexit, you know, 2 unbelievable things happened in the world, and then everybody went and realized that it was down to a data company that was supplying some really accurate, you know, channeled activity, rather than going, there's a big argument over here, try and get your opinion the loudest, which is what normal marketing is. We're going, you know, pay more, be more, have more volume there, so you're the loudest and everyone sees you the most. Actually, what Trump and Brexit did in theory is they left the room that was really loud over here and went to a room with a quieter discussion and made their voices louder over here. And they could only do that with really, really accurate data. As soon as that's on Netflix, as soon as that's in the news saying how Trump did it all, actually that's people when started talking about the word, you know, the phrase is big data. So I think clients don't know that, but it's in the back of their head going, oh yeah, I've heard data can be good, I've heard data can work. But then it's the key is, as soon as they've used it once, it's just factual from that point on. So it's really easy to sell it after somebody's used data the first time. So I think there's another way as well when I described what a full service agency is to people, and I think it's probably more relatable to some people because it's food and everyone loves food, me included, before you say anything. So I think if you look at full service, and I've heard other people describe it as a menu. So you go into a restaurant and you want to eat because you're hungry, and you open the menu and you've got a list of all these different things. They've all got price points. So in theory, you've got a budget. So you'll probably go to that restaurant going, you know, happy to spend 30 quid tonight on a meal. So you look at it, some of them will be really expensive. You'll be like, oh, that's not within my budget. But these ones are. And then you refined it by budget to start with. The next thing you do is, how hungry am I? Actually, do I want a starter, a mains and a pudding? And can my budget fit all 3? You'll probably then have to sacrifice one of those. So I'm a mains and a starter man. You're probably a pudding.
Standard.
Dessert,
Sweet taste, hence the fillings.
So for example, I would then refine it down one more time to go what I actually prefer eating. So I've now done budget and what I like, what I'm confident with. So I'm a starter and my main. And that's what people consider full service, that same principles. Whereas actually, if you have all of the skill sets in-house, so like everyone's in this building, like, you know, so from your events team all the way through to social, the creative side of stuff, digital, all of that's on a menu. But actually, when you get to the restaurant, it's more of a private chef experience. So the chef comes out to you, your account manager, I suppose, your account director, comes out and says, well, what do you actually want? What do you like? Do you like fish? Do you like meat? Do you want something large? Do you want lots of volume meals, but not a big, or do you want something really, really big on a main? Do you like sweet things, like you just said? Are you more savory? And actually, you've then got somebody that's an expert. So he doesn't go back into the kitchen and cook the whole thing for you. He goes back in, he's got sous chefs, he's got pastry chefs, he's got people work on starters, he's got people cleaning up so he can be more efficient. He's got all this stuff in the back that happens while you're politely sat having a drink at your restaurant, and there's chaos, or, you know, calm chaos if you've ever seen Gordon Ramsay and all that type of stuff, but that's going on in the background. to me, that's very much like the agency. So me or you, we go to a client and we get the brief. That's like talking to the private chef. He then takes that in, goes into the room, creates the most amazing meal that's suited to your budgets, how hungry you feel, the types of things you like. So actually, it's a lot more of a tailored experience than just pick from a menu.
Yeah. What's your favourite meal?
Favourite meal?
This is last meal.
Right, I'm about to die.
Yeah, you're done.
Let's take this on a bit of a dark note.
Yeah, well, last meal. Just main. I don't want to hear starter and dessert.
Start as chicken wings. I know you said don't bother, but I'll start with chicken wings.
That's your starter?
Yeah, chicken wings. And it'll be Frank's red hot sauce wings as well. And there's a couple. I'd either have a barbecue platter, so I'm talking ribs, brisket, the lot, or it would be a Chinese. And when I'm talking Chinese, when you pick your plate up and it's actually weighty, like actually you're thinking this is a two-hander. This is a heavy meal, and when it's a heavy meal, you've got a good portion. So I'd have things like Szechuan duck, just literally everything. Okay. What about yourself?
So my head says steak. It's tricky. Pasta done well, proper pasta, I think can be incredible.
You get an influence from Meg here or something?
I am a little bit, but also I'm off to the Amalfi Coast in a few months.
All right,
so I'm going to do a little pasta
drop that in.
Get that in there. So that's when we're going to sample those different pastas.
That just sounds very boring. Just pasta. You haven't even got a particular type of sauce or
To be honest, my head will probably be elsewhere. If it's the last meal.
Yeah, you're probably thinking about life, kids, goodbye everybody.
How's it going to happen?
Yeah, there you go. So if you are going to have your relatively boring pasta, in my personal opinion, and let's do drinks pairings then. So for example, with your agency now, you've got your main, you've got your print campaign, you have a little side of SEO.
Yeah.
So how you're pairing it? What are you going for?
Drink.
Yeah.
Well, my go-to, my treat drink is a whiskey. Love whiskey.
With food though, I've never.
Oh, we're going pairing it with the food.
With your pasta.
Sorry. Okay. I would go. Just keep it simple. I think just a nice lager, maybe.
Yeah, you're a bit of a lager man, aren't you?
I think just a lager, maybe, or depending on what sauce, what the base is, could go with a nice red.
This is why you should be more specific with your brief to the chef.
Yeah, that's why I don't do a lot of briefing.
So it's an interesting one because I was at a client. I was going to say yesterday, but yesterday was the weekend. It was last Thursday, and they'd never worked with a full service agency before. But the pain point that they brought to us and why they wanted us to go and see them is because they currently work with digital agency on PPC. Now, every time they go to them to say they need to sell more of their product or more of a variety of the different product and service that they offer, the answer is always, okay, what's the increased budget? Like, what more have you got to spend? And they said, well, they get it, they've got to spend, but at the same time, there's a solution always, more money equals more results. Now, the PPC agency, unfortunately, are obviously tied to what Google's spitting out, what they can actually get, search volumes they can't control, they've got to actually just maximize that. So they were getting to a point saying, well, actually, your impression shares are something, we need to increase that. So yeah, it's going to be more budget every single time. Now, that answer is probably acceptable the first time because someone goes, okay, yeah, we can find some. Then it's the same questions. Whereas I think, interestingly, we can go back to our data team and say, okay, we're getting to a point with PPC where now actually every time we spend more money, we're getting less efficient with the money. So it is increasing leads, but actually it's getting more and more expensive because we're running out of that sort of, that top bit, the lake's getting empty basically because we've fished it already. And that's what I think is a really good thing about full service agencies. We can actually go, are there other mediums which are more affordable or cheaper or, using mediums that some competitors aren't even using?
I agree. I actually think to take that one step further as well, the full service nature, but also the in-house full service nature as well. So actually, I'd like to say we pride ourselves on, being a really hybrid workplace, but the amount of times that I've been in a room with other account managers or whatever it may be, and it's just that knowledge share, and you hear something from someone else, you know, you're listening and you go, actually, what was that? And that spawns a 15-minute conversation, and the power of that to take back to your client is massive.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were fully remote, you'd never have those experiences and those moments, you know, almost like the water cooler moments they used to be called.
Yeah,
but I think
we don't have a water cooler, though, do we?
We don't, no. We have a bar moment instead. We do this.
Yeah, bar moments instead.
Yeah, sorry you work's late. We're just, but I think that's really key as well. To your point, if it was just a PPC agency, all your conversations would be around PPC.
Yeah.
However, full service and in-house, the power of the conversation is massive. And I think that's dwindled probably, I'd say. Yeah. In life as well, really. You know, we're so fast paced, it's so much easier to send a text.
Yeah, even when you're sat in the office though as well, and there's someone who's on the other side of the room, sometimes you're guilty of doing Teams in somebody.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, normally I'd walk and
you can hear their echo.
Yeah, but you prefer to type to them.
Yeah.
The in-house element and being in the office, I think is really valid. I get your point, but I also think the thing that people don't count is the efficiencies from a client side. Now the reason before I was agency side, I had an in-house role, and I had a PR agency, I had a SEO agency, I had a digital agency, and we had some in-house dev resource as well. And what I'd have to do is I'd have to go to sales managers, understand what their targets was, and I'd bring that back. I would then probably spend a day, if not more, working out which bits I needed to send to the PR agency, which bits I needed to send to the SEO agency, which bits I'd give to my in-house team. And each person would want a slightly different snippet of information. But where it got tangled is they'd say, well, what's that team doing? Because I don't want to be starting a project going in this direction if they're going in that, because we've got to work together. So then I'd end up going, okay, well, should we try and get a meeting together? Now this was before Teams and all that type of stuff. So you can imagine I was 2 weeks deep into a month and I hadn't even had a physical meeting yet. You then get things like, oh, Dave can't come, so Sharon's coming instead. But Sharon didn't work on my account all the time. And it was almost like the efficiencies of comms or efficiencies of briefing. If you've got one central focus of an account manager that then internally has all 5, 6, 7 members of all those different skill sets instantly, it's one brief from a client perspective rather than 5 or 6. So again, I think that's a real advantage in my personal opinion. Yeah, massively. It's almost like that 1 AM account manager, in a way they're almost like an internal client, as it were, because they're almost so passionate about the client that they almost, take on that role for the other departments. I think you find that most it's the age-old accounts versus studio. Where you'll get battle. Well, not necessarily. It's friendly discussion. But I think, as to your point though, the account manager starts to become a brand guardian and a brand ambassador for the client anyway. Like, you do start to become passionate about it. I mean, I've done everything from rubbish trucks through cutlery, cakes, cars and stuff. And weirdly, you'll start maybe on that account not really knowing that much about the industry, but a couple of weeks in you start to become like, oh wow, there's a rubbish truck going past. Have a look at it when everyone else is looking at you, think it's a bit weird. So I do think then they still, you don't lose that sort of brand passion that the client may think they're losing in that team. I think your account manager fights those battles for you as well. So I think that's really good, is the efficiencies it gives you as well. So getting close to finishing our drinks. So while we're on the theme of drinks, I know I was going to say what's your favourite drink, but it seems we're in a bar setting and there's the top row there. I know you're a whiskey fan, so any whiskey fans watching, is there any tips at the moment, anything that's new, anything that you'd recommend?
The thing is, I tend to go back to the ones that I really like. I do try new ones every now and again, but for me, I'm really into Japanese whiskey at the moment. Love it. So anything sort of Hibiki based, anything from the Suntory distilleries. Hibiki or Hibichi, or how do you pronounce it? I just go Hibiki. 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 But as a nice, I was going to say daily, it's not a daily. Warning. As a nice sipper, Nikkei or Nikka from the barrel is what I like. That's little square bottle. That's quite punchy though, right? Punchy, but it gets you. It's good. Yeah. What's you're more smoky peaty, aren't you? No, I like all of them. I suppose that's, again, warning. I like any whiskey I get. I'll drink anything. Yeah. No, I like the Hibiki as well. What's open? What was the last one you drank? What was the last thing you drank? Last one,
Do you know what? This is really quite awkward because the one I'm drinking at the moment.
You took it from here.
No, the one I'm drinking at the moment, I can't even say the name or the type of it because I might have got it for your birthday.
Oh, okay.
So if I say it, it might ruin it.
Okay, fine. So,
But Johnny Walker,
yeah.
and it's not a normal Johnny Walker. Again, don't Google this after because you'll ruin your birthday. Yeah. But it's not a green, red or black. It's a new one. And apparently they started it in like airports and, the travel only ones.
Yeah.
And it got so popular, but only from a key demographic. So it was a big hit in America. And then they started to tweak it, realizing it was very similar to a bourbon. And actually now they're bringing it out properly. So if it arrives in time, it's for your birthday.
Okay. If not, you drank half the bottle.
If not, I've got 2 bottles of it. So I suppose this is cheers to the first of hopefully many episodes. One thing I didn't say actually earlier before we do the cheers thing is it's meant to be a podcast, right? But how come we haven't got one of those really weird booms, and how come we haven't got really ridiculously sized headphones? Because I don't know whether that counts as an official podcast unless you have those in it.
Because this is we're just chatting in a bar, aren't we?
We're better than that. Okay, so cheers. There we go.